you data similar to and different from what's been reported in the other, in the other literature. I spoke about chapter organization. Okay, Rigour. Now, this idea that anything goes in qualitative research needs to be met with caution. I think that ways to ensure credibility, one way is around having more than one person code the data, which is very useful. Another way is triangulation, right? So, for example, for the medical doctor project, all the male participants kept on saying that chemical pathology is a career ideally suited for women, and it's dominated by women in South Africa. But I went and checked the labor market statistics from the Health Professionals Board, and it's dominated by men. Now, that's a way of verifying data. But it's interesting. Why would they say that? Because in their construction of that career, occupation of chemical pathology, they've constructed it as a feminine career. So women should do it. But the data shows that more men are doing it. So that's one way. It's triangulation, trying to say, okay, this is what my participants have said. How else can I verify what they've said? Now, if you're doing pure storytelling or narrative research, there I think it matters less. So if you're asking someone to give you a detailed narrative account of their career history, we don't know whether what they're saying is the truth or not. But there we're really more interested in the meaning that their career lives have had for them, rather than whether they really worked here for 5 years or not. So credibility can be established. Transferability or generalizability, it's not always possible or needed in qualitative research. But in my example, I was able to say, look, my study of a sector switching between the public and private sector in KwaZulu-Natal did fit in with findings that other people have done with that subset of medical specialists. But I can't really generalize beyond that, right? So don't force yourself to generalize if it's not possible. The other thing you can do is there's something called dependability, where we may not be able to replicate your study, as in positivist research, but explain your research process in detail. I did interviews, I did focus groups, I did content analysis. This is where I did the interviews. The more detail you give to your research process, the more dependable your research seems, because it's not sort of quick and dirty research. I would also say include, and this is about writing yourself into the research, include some kind of reflective commentary about yourself as the researcher. In positivist research, you are at a distance. The world is there, and you don't really meet. But with this kind of research, face it, you may influence the way respondents answer your questions or participants answer your questions. So a reflective commentary about how you think your gender may have influenced the study, your race, your position, power, etc. That's sort of an audit trail. I'm not going to go into this in detail, but this, I think, will be distributed, and it sort of shows you the different ways you can present your qualitative data visually depending on the type of collection you did, right? So it's not always words, and the software is great. It does some really good things in terms of visualizing. Now, management students are obsessed with models, right, and doing models and so on, and they are important. But this is an example from a study on youth homelessness, and it used qualitative data only to sort of establish a kind of model in understanding youth homelessness. And these things were the themes, right? Stasis, disequilibrium, mainstream, first on the street. So you can do this kind of really interesting visualization as well. Another way to present your interview data in a reduced form is through matrices, where you sort of organize the data in this form. Another way is this. So you have your methods, the type of information obtained, the conclusions, what you think you should do next. It's really, you can be quite creative. I think that's it. I just want to say, can I have 1 minute, please? Okay, I spoke about writing yourself into research. Again, about credibility. I often send back my interview transcripts to the participants. And along with a summary, my email saying, look, these are the 5 things I think you've said. If you have time, look at the transcript. If not, do you agree that these are the 5 things you've said? And that's a really good way of doing it and letting their voice speak. Don't be overly concerned with validity and reliability, but describe your research process, and you're more interested in meaning. Try and get at least someone else to code as well. When you're describing your data, for journals especially, they sometimes will say, how many words in total were your interview transcriptions? How many pages? How many hours? They often want to know that now, right? It just depends. And just another example about the different ways we can understand the world through a qualitative approach and a quantitative approach. I did a report with a colleague on race classification at UKZN, which was a qualitative study. And it was quite interesting because when you interview people about how they identify their race, people are not that easy to self-classify as Indian or African or white or whatever. People's construction of their race is very complicated, and they sort of reject these ways that their race is classified. So that compared to a more quantitative study of race, which says, okay, if you're African, it means this, there's no debate. If you're Indian, it means this, there's no debate. So you can do the exact same study through a qualitative approach and a quantitative approach and arrive at 2 completely different meanings of the world.